episode 50. I didn't even tell you. You're episode 50. Isn't that crazy? I feel like it's crazy that there's been 50 of these. 50 times my hands have done this, and it's probably annoyed 50% of the people watching. It's okay. Whatever, get your own show. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cackle. This is Entry Point's weekly interview series where we highlight small businesses, startups, and people having an impact on the community. Today, we're talking to Kate Mitchell, who, if you don't know, is super famous. But she is a partner and co-founder of Scale Venture Partners. We'll talk more about all the other cool things she does as well in a bit. But she is a California-based venture capitalist. She works closely with a bunch of startup companies. She supports a number of philanthropic causes and advocates for the entrepreneurial ecosystem on the local level as well as the national level, big time national level. You also just won that award yesterday from the National Venture Capital Association. I saw that. I was like, oh, fancy. Like, it's as if I knew that you were going to win that. And then I just scooped up the interview real fast.
Award-winning stage. Just like this.
Yeah, exactly. That's what yesterday when we were promoting the episode, we were like, award-winning, nationally renowned venture capitalist Kate Mitchell. That would be my news talky voice. So if anybody, per usual, if anybody has any questions or comments or whatever, you can put them in the comment, and then we can try to get to them as we go through. So yay! How are you?
Good. We just had a hailstorm here last night, so I'm trying to emulate the Midwest. We had our version of snow.
Oh my God. It's 66 here right now. I'm so excited. I feel like the fact that it's becoming spring this year, I'm the pandemic is over.
I know. I took my mom to get her vaccine, and I was like, is there anything left in that? Can you stick it in right here?
I think I honestly might cry when I get mine.
I think I am. I told my mom, I said, Mom, it's like when your best friend gets the coolest sweater. I want one of those.
I know. You just push her out of the way. She's like, what? I burned you.
I want one of those.
That's so funny. So talk a little bit about your background and kind of your journey to being a founder of a very well-known venture capital firm and all you do.
Thank you. The good news for most people, I did not spring forth fully formed. I only sprung to 5'2", but you know what I'm saying. And, I actually took computer science as an undergraduate at Stanford before it was an undergraduate major. Kind of crazy. Dinosaurs were not roaming the earth at that time. But it wasn't a big thing. Everybody in my class was going into investment banking. So I decided to kind of pursue this tech thing. And maybe relevant for a lot of people in the audience that I did not run out and say, okay, I'm going to go found, Apple. I came from a large family. My father passed away not long after I graduated from college, had younger sisters who were not even in grade school. And I cared about having a job that paid consistently. And venture really wasn't a thing that much then.
Yeah.
So I went to go work for a series of big financial institutions because in 1980, the last big financial crash, they were hiring. So that looked really good to me. And then this idea, one of my partners, Sharon Weinberg, sort of put it this way: you never know your direct line in life, but if you're in the right quadrant, you're good. So I've always had a foot in finance and a foot in tech. Because I was, as the youngest person in all these teams I was part of, tech sort of ended up flowing my way. Fast forward in the early 90s at Bank of America, again, I'm a woman in a financial institution. They were very supportive, which was a great opportunity. I wasn't going to look that, gift in the eye, but I kind of like to go where there was change. I became entrepreneurial with big training wheels, meaning I was an entrepreneur in a really big company, but ended up starting this, what then was online banking. We were the first bank with a URL. The first bank to have online banking up. We partnered with people like Steve Case at AOL. That was a very comfortable walled garden for our customers. So I got to know he and Gene, and still working with him on the work he's doing with Rise of the Rest. I ended up having an employee, wanted to be a consultant, not an employee, Craig Newmark, who went on to found Craigslist. I ended up having this guy coming in and jiggling around with our middleware That's like technical speak for how the software gets knitted together. This is the knitting.
I know.
The knitting was done by Mark Andreessen, the founder of Netscape, and now Andreeson Horowitz. So, but it wasn't cool, man. We were geeky.
My only claim to fame is well, I've got a couple of small claim to fame, but is I had interviewed Steve Case for something, and I was like, we were like off to the side, like waiting to go out to the stage, and I was like, "What was your AOL screen name?" I just had to like blurt it out. Like I was like, "Mine was the State of Emily. What was yours?" And then he was just like, "Steve." Yeah, it really helps when you're like the first person on AOL. I was like,
that would be good. You didn't have to be Steve 35533.
I know. I was like, it helps to be at the top.
Or numero uno. That's so cool.
Oh my God.
So then it was really in the mid-90s. Then I spun off to be part of a venture firm that was sponsored by Bank of America. And then with my Irish co-founder, Rory O'Driscoll, formed what has become Scale Venture Partners in 2000. And again, this idea that Sharon Weinbach pointed out, if you start in the white quadrant, what did I do as a practitioner? I was an enterprise software, I ran enterprise software and was putting up applications within a business. And that is in essence, not just because of me, but the collection of people in the firm. Broadly defined, that's our expertise. We stuck with what we knew and it grew from what we knew. You fast forward and I'm on board 2 public boards. One is Silicon Valley Bank, and interestingly enough, of course, it caters, and people who are listening, by the way, should tap into all of Silicon Valley Banks. It's svb.com. They have tons of resources for entrepreneurs and videos, sports, and they have a big Midwest presence. Their CEO is an Indiana University grad, and wonderful. But how fun, here I am later in my career, where the fact that I have a banking background and a venture background is both relevant. Pretty darn exciting. So, people sometimes have an opinion or a view that maybe you sprung forth and you knew day one that you were going to be a successful entrepreneur or a venture capitalist. I think we all end up, A, play to your strengths and what you love, and B, you end up having a series of adjacent career moves often to get to where you end up wanting to be, and be ready for that and just keep your ears and mind open. And that's sort of how I wound to be where I am today. So, and I'm loving it.
Man, that is so cool. I love that. Yeah. And I know it doesn't hurt that you're like the smartiest of smarty pantses. Like I was looking at your LinkedIn, which is what I do and then cry to myself prior to every interview. I'll be like, oh my God, she went to Stanford for undergrad and then Harvard Business School. I'm over here being like, all I did was get drunk on the weekends at Michigan State.
Oh, well, first of all, you don't need to have gone to all the best schools.
Yeah.
World. I got an executive, it was an executive session at HBS at Harvard, but my actual MBA was from a very well-known school, called Golden Gate University, that my employer paid at night because I had already had enough student loans at Stanford. And actually, that's where my formal MBA is from. And I loved it. Why? Because I was sitting next to a bunch of people who were older than I was applying business.
Yeah.
Out for me.
I do find like a lot of the programs that I've been in where there's like people that are like they've been at jobs and are trying to like up their skill level, and by going back to school at night, like they know like all of the real things that are happening and how like things operate. So it was like so interesting. By the way, Nicole Walker from Baird she just was like, you're super famous.
I love Nicole.
Yeah, I was like, if everyone doesn't know Nicole Walker, you should like look her up real quick after this interview, of course. But she is like so amazing. I'm like such a fangirl of hers. Yeah, best ever. Best ever except for Kate Mitchell. Oh no.
How many great people are in Midwest? Nicole's one of them.
I know. Yeah. So awesome. So I'm so interested to hear your opinion of what you think that you see on the horizon for the tech community. So we're like emerging from the pandemic. It is getting warm outside here in the Midwest. Like what is all this kind of mean for the future of the tech community?
I will tell you that. I will, by the way, I want to also right at the top thank you for having me, because as I
Oh,
mentioned, our little pre-thing, because you are hitting one of my objectives. And this does get to where I think venture will be going, or is going. I am a founding board member of something called VentureForward. It's an affiliate of something called the National Venture Capital Association.
yeah.
And we are focused on educating the next generation of venture capitalists. Our goal is to make that population more diverse, and that includes gender, race, ethnicity, and geography.
Bam. Come
And
out here, Midwest, everyone. Other
we,
like our housing prices are so low.
bingo,
And
that'll help us in San Francisco, by the way. It's awesome. Let's spread that peanut butter, that sauce across the country. In fact, we got to do it. And we have something we run called VCU, Venture Capital University.
oh
And
yeah.
when we were pre-pandemic, when we were the before times, one of our classes was at the Ross Business School at University of Michigan. So we are holding, when we do these in person, we do them virtually as well. We're doing it in the Midwest. So thank you.
Yeah.
This is where I want to be. So
Yay, awesome. Yeah, well, I am so excited to have you on. And you're always like such a good like advocate for people across the country. So it's like always so good to.
Well, and this is why, and this is, let's call it small d, but let's bring it to the top. It's why diversity matters. Not everything good happens in like the 49 square miles that is San Francisco, or the peninsula.
Yeah.
And great ideas. In fact, we do better when we have ideas and we bring skills from across the country. Think about the depth of expertise that exists in the kinds of companies that were built in the Midwest that are not known. And when you think about, and this gets to my point about where is tech going, every time people call tech dead, I'm like, stat. The markets go like this. The use of tech has just gone up over time. Yeah. And one of the things that I see happening is what I call the long tail of tech. When I started in tech, broadly defined, most venture capital, most technology was in Silicon Valley. And by the way, a lot of us were selling to each other. The chips are being sold to Apple, and Apple's, we were all, and they're installing Oracle and SAP on those same systems. And it was because the use of digital technologies was actually not as widespread. Now when you look at it, I'm also on the board of a large industrial tech company, also founded and led by Michigander. Fortive Corporation is the company. Both of my public boards are S&P 500 companies. It's a big industrial tech company. He went to Michigan, bleeds maize and blue. And one of the things you see in their business, they have been around for a long time as a predecessor company, Danaher, and now Fortive. And our leaders in their businesses, they are digitizing and so this is an example of where everybody across the country, even old industrial businesses, Sesame Street has a venture firm, because guess what? Education is all about tech.
Oh, man.
And so it's the long tail of tech. So again, when I think about all of you on this call, this is our opportunity to sort of bring our expertise in all the markets that we're in and think about how to apply technology to them and become better, faster, smarter, and deliver people and services now digitally. And I think that's one of the big things in the pandemic. Now we can have, Emily, you and I can get together right here, right now. No plan.
I do like that. I do love a video. I'm like, what if this had happened 100 years ago? All the extroverts would have just been like,
yeah.
Oh God, that would have been so terrible if I didn't have like a video and oh my gosh.
You're lucky when you think about venture again and tech and innovation broadly defined. We have actually done well in the pandemic. Not all. I mean, if you were in something in the travel tech industry, or all those, sports, games, those kinds of things, clearly there would be some challenges, no doubt. Most of technology, again, we've leaned on technology to help us through it, not just Zoom, but all the other different things that we're using to get things done. We're also realizing that we can connect with each other virtually so much more quickly. Would it be worth even flying across the country? And think about the many people that can today on a drop of a hat notice this morning, based on you and I tweeting, and can show up, that if this was in person, they wouldn't be able to come. And so I think technology is going to enable us to really think differently. I think we're going to think differently as managers. Does everybody need to be in the office? How do we accommodate families and not? Now, sometimes it's good to be in the office if you have a lot of people crawling over the sides.
Yeah. But then presumably after the pandemic, kids will be in school again and things like that, and it will make that a lot easier being at home.
But I think it's going to be a very interesting time, and I think we continue to look at opportunities for people applying to, and by the way, the underlying technology, the ability to, our pipes, if you will, if you think about just like water or electricity, a lot of this technology, there's more that can be done. There's more in all of our devices. This little phone has more in it than the machines that launched the Apollo series of series. So when you think about that, plus now artificial intelligence, which sounds so darn scary, is that my computer going to be smarter than I am? That is a possibility. But know that it anticipates things, that it solves certain very similar common tasks so that you and I can get one step forward much more quickly, where we can use our human brains and empathy and problem solving in a way that machines can't. So there's a huge amount of underlying widgets and the similar things happening in life sciences. There's a real golden age. You see this in the vaccines, Moderna, et cetera. It's a renaissance there. And again, I think all of that is setting a great platform for us to go forward even post-pandemic. I think we're realizing the power of these things and that they can coexist and be used really across the economy.
What do you think about, so like a lot of people in the Midwest or maybe elsewhere just outside of the Bay Area are kind of like, have been lately being like, in the tech community, have been like, everyone's going to leave the coast and they're going to come over to like, where it's lower cost of living and like all of this. Do you see that there? Or like, is that like a thing that you guys are like, that's not happening?
I think yes and yes. Meaning, I don't think there is, there's a little bit of frontier aspect to, I'm born and raised in the area, and I am a rarity. I mean, there's almost nobody. I go to our local fire department in North Beach, and my maiden name is Dentoni. It's Italian. They immigrated to North Beach, and I say I really have not gone very far. But I'm an absolute rarity. There is a frontier tech aspect to, and what does that mean? People are comfortable taking risks and are kind of on the cutting edge here. I think it will continue to be. My grandfather came out from Virginia. He worked for NASA and he opened Ames Research Center. He did all the technology for them. James Vincent Kelly, my mom. And these are people that are putting up, when he started out Pratt Whitney, put up dirigibles and then did, engines and then went to work for NASA. There's an element of frontier tech. By the way, so I think there will be some of that here. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it got way overheated. Yeah, people would look at the salaries in Silicon Valley and say, woohoo, you can make this much as an engineer. And you can pay such a bloody fortune for a teeny tiny apartment that who cares making, and you won't have a parking space. Net, was it that much better? So I think it will still be an interesting place. I look at like our Israeli companies in our portfolio, JFrog and WalkMe are good examples, real hot companies. The Israelis have figured out, keep your engineering team, keep a lot of your guts of your company in your home territory. There's unique aspects of the knowledge those two companies have coming out of the Israeli military and other things that the engineers they have there are awesome. They have a sales and marketing team in Silicon Valley. So I think it's a yes and yes. And I think the pandemic has opened people's eyes and I think, by the way, it's going to be good for San Francisco and good for Silicon Valley, I think Silicon Valley is a state of mind, not a place. Mm-hmm. And so I think I think this idea of frontier, thinking and risk taking, that's what we need to export across the country, because I think the people skills, and now that people can work from anywhere, and we want to have that long tail of technology applied to businesses like education, agriculture, things that we don't know, that isn't the area of expertise so much in Silicon Valley. So I do think things are going to be, I don't think it's bad for San Francisco and Silicon Valley. I don't think it's going to be a no man's land, but you see the heat having come down. It was too hot. And that's never good. We were too hot and everyone else was not. Let's try to make everything doing well.
Yeah. And I think that state of mind thing is like a good point. Like I think in the Midwest, like people are a little bit like nervous to take risks and things like that. And then the experience level, it's not like there's that many. I mean, there's a good handful, but like there's not a bunch of people. Like you can't bump into Starbucks like someone who's scaled a tech company before, where like you guys are just like going crazy with it out there. And like I feel like some of that experience level, like coming out to the Midwest, could make like a big impact on the community here. And then, but I also think like the point of view and skill sets of people elsewhere in the country being like kind of added into that, like, and it's the same with like New York City or Boston or whatever.
Yeah.
Like have some of those areas get a little bit more like Midwest or elsewhere flavor. I only care about the Midwest. I'm like Midwest flavor, and then the other places.
And I, you know, again, I married into my Midwestern roots, and I'm very proud of them. And you know, you hit on this though, and I think it's worth pausing for a second. This idea of risk taking is really, it's hard, by the way, and particularly if you come in a situation. Michael Siebel, one of the senior partners and a serially successful entrepreneur himself, Black man, he and I had a good conversation a number of years ago saying it's harder if you also don't have the security. You know, you maybe come from a family of means, you know, you went to Stanford, you became a Google engineer. Well, yeah, you take a lot of risk, you know, and you have a great network and all this other stuff. Well, what if you came not from all those places and you don't have a lot in the savings account and all that other stuff? So risk taking is not always, it sounds nice, it's not easy. But I think, again, my example of you begin to iterate towards success, you can begin taking risks within a larger organization. In fact, those large organizations hugely value that. Again, Fortive, for example, this big industrial tech company, has its own kind of internal incubator. They're working with external incubators around the country. You can begin to develop that muscle, even in a very traditional firm. You know, there are small, you know, retail shops that are more innovative than others. You see it in the restaurant industry right now during the pandemic. Some restaurants, it's like, oh man, you can't come in, we're closing. Yeah. You have some that are like, whoa, I can do takeout, I can package my stuff in jars, I can sell my stuff down the road, you know, I can partner with 3 other people. Yeah. Innovation versus not risk taking, you know, and being willing to fail. I think the other thing is not only taking a risk, but also realizing you iterate. You take the risk and you say, okay, I opened up that restaurant for XYZ, and 2 weeks later, nobody came. I think I'll try something different. What did I
Well, so nobody wants these fancy hot dogs I made. Okay, cool.
Right. I mean, let's see. Yeah.
That's interesting that you say that. So like, I mean, at Entry Point, we do like a lot of research on the small business, and like, that's what we do. We're a research institution. In case people didn't know, they're like, what's this nice talk show host? I'm like, actually, I'm a researcher. Just kidding. So like we talk to a lot of founders, like tech company founders, a lot of small business owners. And I think it is interesting to see like, we probably talk to like 1,000 companies a month, like tons. And it's really interesting. I was just telling my dad yesterday that like, there will be always the one person that'll be like, no, pandemic ruined my, you know, they took our jobs kind of thing. And like all this stuff, and we'll be like, you know, saying that everything is terrible and that the, you know, governor made them shut down and like all this stuff. And then, but then I'll be like, yes, but we've talked to like 25 other people in your same exact sector, like that own a restaurant in your same exact geography that have figured it out. So it's like a mindset thing, not a
mindset. I think that's exactly it. And how do you say, okay, I just got knocked down. Next play, what do I do next?
Yeah.
And how do I jump over all my own little things, hangups I've got? What does the market need? What does people still want it? Gosh, getting out and eating locally. And by the way, I have wanted to get out and spend my money because I am employed by Zoom.
Wait, you are?
Be it not by Zoom is the company.
It's like, wait, what?
Yes, I can do my business. So I'm still I'm lucky. I don't physically.
Yeah, I was like, man, tell them I love their filtering function. Makes me look so well rested.
I wish I was an investor. Shout out to my friends at Emergence Capital. But since I can do my business via Zoom, I'm making a point. I'm loving local. Man, it's going to change, by the way, I think about local all the time, by the way. Going local, helping out local entrepreneurs, getting to know my local entrepreneurs. So, and you know, the food store down the street who's really been scrappy, you know, about what he's delivering and become kind of the go-to place in the neighborhood. I mean, his business has taken off, and I want him. Is he a little bit more than whatever company that I can buy stuff from? Yeah, but he's down the street, and he's great, and he's local, and I love his kids, and I get to see my neighbors there. That's more value to me. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff that's going on that I think think we're going to think differently about community as well when we get through this, which again, I'm on the board of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, which is the largest community foundation in the country. And we're focused on closing the income gap and delivering, and establishing more equity in Silicon Valley, one of our real shortcomings there. And, this idea that we really focus and are committed to building our own communities across the country. I think that's we're going to get out of this, that it was easy to get on a plane and say, community, what's that? We all now think, okay, we love our communities.
Yeah, I do love that. That's like next week we are talking to somebody a lot about that, like just about like connecting more with your community and like how that can be like a function of your life and stuff. So I love that. I like how we're such big talkers, and I'm looking at the time like, oh my God, I have like 900 more questions for you. So according to our research, approximately 17% of the venture capital professionals in the Midwest are women. Compared to 21% of venture capital professionals nationally. And I think that's an NVCA stat. I should have wrote down my sources, like I'm an amateur over here. Neither are near representative population, obviously. So what guidance do you have for women who are interested in a career in venture capital? And do you have like any guidance related to entering a male-dominated industry?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. One is, so yes, VentureForward. I mean, we're doing a lot of programming around diversity, not just gender, but beyond that. And we also have sponsored with Deloitte, who's just been fabulous, a series of studies, because it's over time that, you can't go on a diet if you don't buy a scale. And so that's our scale. And we're not proud of those results, but when it comes to women, there has been steady progress. And if you look at the social maps of men and women, there's certainly overlap. Where it has not been as successful yet has been around race and ethnicity. And we are, we're right out there. We just published our most recent report. We continue to be very intentional about that, and the same thing with geography. And that's why we're being intentional about that. So I would say, when you ask me this question of what it's like to be a woman in venture, or by the way, I would just say broadly in entrepreneurship, including venture.
Yeah.
Because again, when you walk into Google, you're going to see the same thing I see in a boardroom. In my 20 now, more than 20 years, practicing venture, I have been on one other board with one other female VC.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was worse before. And I joke that, I chose a career where I don't have to stand in line for the bathroom. Like, it's okay.
I know I used to do a side note. I used to do a women in tech bathrooms thing on my Facebook, where every time I was at a huge tech event and I would be like rushing to the bathroom, like, oh my God, there's probably going to be such a big line. And then I would go to the bathroom and it'd be empty.
Empty.
Oh, look at this.
The only problem is, like, with board meetings, like the whole board, like everybody, all the men go into one room and I'm alone in the other. So I'm like going,
have fun standing in line.
I would wait to flush because I could wash quietly, but I couldn't. I'd be like, are they talking about the board? Well,
yeah. And was the person that was on the board with you, Nicole Walker?
No, it wasn't. I wish she was. It was
oh my gosh.
It was one of for a long time, was the chairman of NetSuite as an investor, just an amazing person. No, it wasn't enough. And 2 female CEOs, by the way. So 3 beginning 3 decades now. But so I think this is true then of people of race, different ethnicity. And even if you, like, I remember Josh James and certainly Scott Dorsey coming from Indiana, and CEO of ExactTarget, Scott Dorsey now at High Alpha. A great source for people in the Midwest, by the way, and on the NVCA board. Same thing, Josh James, the founder of Omniture in Provo. They'd come to Silicon Valley and say, hey, what's the lingo here? So I think almost anybody who's not of Silicon Valley feels like they're an other. When you walk in the room, you can't not think about that. So my advice, obviously I am a woman, so that's the one I can relate to, but I think this applies to everybody, is, obviously I'm doing work now to use my gravitas to change the ratio in venture. When you are the one walking in the room, just, think about yourself as an athlete. You want to get on the team, have the ball passed to you, and be able to score.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do want to figure out how's the game played, use coaches, go to things like this, learn from people, go to Silicon Valley Bank, watch their videos, go to Venture Crest, watch what Ed Zimmerman does, look at what Kaufman Fellows writes up. They are very focused on diversity. Kaufman Fellows is amazing. Get as smart as you can, get to know the secret handshake, if you will. Talk to people like Gail Wilkinson at, Vitalize in Indiana, or Scott, as I mentioned, because now that they've been successful in the Midwest, they know the speak. Even if they don't invest in your sector, ask them to listen to your pitch and tell you why it would or would not play in Chicago, New York, or in Silicon Valley. So I think you just need, at the time, you can't change the ratio when you're just trying to get in the room.
Yeah.
You will by entering the room. And by the way, you will help the decision making once you get in there. You will make the industry better. So don't take that out of your head. They're not doing you a favor, you're doing them a favor. I'm sorry the light's coming in.
Yeah, I was like, come closer to the screen.
I know.
You're also like, this is what everyone gets the creep into the interview. You like start to like.
That's a little better. Okay. So in any event, I think for any of us, it's take that out of your head. You're going in, you are going to add to the team because you don't come with the same background as everybody else you're entering in. Go with that in mind. And again, think of yourself as an athlete, not a female athlete, Black athlete, Latino athlete. Go in and just an athlete from the Midwest, just go in and say, I'm good at what I do. Listen to this. I've been doing my homework. Get smart. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
And I think and then use your resources that include obviously you guys and the resources in the Midwest to prepare yourself well to be the best athlete. By being on the field, you will be changing the ratio. And if you continue to do well like me, you will probably join me and want to help more of us come along and do that.
Yeah. So do you think that kind of like entering I guess we'll say like white male dominated field, like perseverance is kind of the key?
Yeah, you need a little grit, you need to, like, it's funny. I went to one all male, I became chairman of the National Venture Capital Association. I was asked to a dinner of the founders of all these firms.
You must be legit the best board member because you're on like every board in history.
Well, I enjoy boards. I enjoy collaborating with other people. And this very senior group of founders of the big Silicon Valley firms had me join this dinner that they were having every quarter. I was the first woman ever to join this dinner. And at the end, one of them really meant well and said, how was it for you? And I said, the real question is, how was it for you? This is like every board I walk into. So my real question is, did it change your conversation?
Yeah, you're like, how was integration for you? Right. What was your experience? You're like, what? That's the craziest. Like, what? They should be ashamed. Like, I laugh because it's not really that funny, but like, things like that, like where I'm just like, oh my.
Well, by the way, that was now, good 10, 15 years ago. Almost every one of those firms I'm talking about has female partners. By the way, having me in the door, they began to radically change who attended that dinner. So the good news is, by the way, this is a great time for all of us. People, whether it's George Floyd, whether it's lean in and all Sheryl Sandberg's issue. There are myriad. Me too. You know what? Don't let a crisis go to waste. People are understand the pandemic and other locations across the country. I think this is an opportunity now for us all who consider ourselves the others to rise up, because again, those white men are also realizing now's the time. And if you look at the current chair of the NVCA board, a good friend, Barry Eggers, the founder of Lightspeed, I sometimes have to almost interrupt him in his passion about inclusion and diversity. So the good news is now's the time. It's a great time for us. Is it perfect? No. Is it ever? It never will be. But people have more of a growth mindset around this issue. So take advantage of it. Is every firm, forward thinking? No. Are more of them? Absolutely. And you see it in the numbers.
Yeah, man, I like that. Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. I was like, oh gosh, okay, we're way over. So I'm going to speed us right along.
Yeah. You guys go back to your morning.
Let's see.
Or afternoon, depending on your time zone.
I know. I was like, I pretend that it's the morning right now, even though it's the afternoon here.
Exactly.
The morning see, I like that, the video calling. So, okay. Oh, I totally want to know this. I'm like reading through like, which ones do I not care about? Which questions? So you are a super active board member, as I said. And you're, an active member of the venture community. So you invest in companies that then you could sit on the board, that you might sit on the board of, and things like that. How do you have any guidance on selecting board members? Like, how do you choose the right people? How do you choose the right lens for selecting?
I got this lesson, and by the way, I think I'm going to say this, and I will also say, if you are even looking for a job or other things, that keep these kinds of things in mind. But when you think about a board, Frank Baldino was the founder of a large biotech company called Cephalon. He has since passed away, but I asked him this question, and you interview, just like hiring, be thoughtful about complementing skills around the table. And so if you are an entrepreneur and you're building your board, and by the way, it may be a high growth startup, and it might not be a high growth startup, and you're building an advisory board for your local business, you think about what you bring in his case, he was a pharmacologist, so he understood drugs and drug development and drug, delivery. He didn't understand finance, he didn't understand hiring people, he didn't understand large scale distribution, and he built out his board day one of people who had skills he did not, and B, complemented each other, and he built connective tissue between those board members. He always insisted on a dinner the night before. There are different ways to solve it, certainly pandemic times, but build a respect and their first drug failed at the FDA, and he said, rather than pointing at each other, we all knew what each other's expertise was. We went together, we solved the problem. They are now one of the largest biotech companies on the planet, and wildly successful. And he credits a lot of that to building the right board. So, and by the way, don't look for prestige, see TheraSense for details. Isn't that it? Wasn't it TheraSense? The one that had all the crazy stuff that happened.
Oh, yeah. Theranos?
With a lot of noteworthy people. Don't go by brand. Go by people that have time for you, that have skill sets, and won't just show up, but actually sponsor you and your activities. It will introduce you to their network that will take time for you. So I think you want to build those skills, build connective tissues, and be picky. You're hiring think of your own personal board of directors, and brand alone isn't it. Don't go for the highest title necessarily. Or if you do, be conscious and say, okay, I'm going to circle that. That's the value with that. And I'm going to stop there. And if I get more, great, but think about why you're doing everything you do.
Yeah, that is a good point, because you could get those board members that are for the clout, and then they don't respond to your emails.
Well, the minute you have a problem, they run the other way because it'll hurt their brand.
Oh,
heartbreaking.
That's interesting. That's funny because I don't run a tech company, obviously. So we have a board and things like that, but people aren't. I guess if you did something really crazy as more of a Main Street company, then people would be like, but that's interesting. Yeah, I could totally see how that would happen if you're like, you guys are bringing down my brand here. I'm out of here.
Oh, you might have risk. Gotta go.
Yeah, that is interesting. But it is you notice who's a good board member if you can text them with a random question, or you can reach out to them and they actually answer, they respond to your emails and things like that. And then some board members is just where'd you go?
That's problem solve, and they're there for your bad days, because everybody has crummy, disastrous days, and do they have your back?
Yeah, that is really good advice. So what is to kind of wrap this up, what is your personal and professional focus for 2021 like?
Well, personal goal, I just can't wait to hug more people.
Yeah, I know.
I'm known as a hugger, so there you go.
We're right around the corner from that. It's going to be your arms are going to be sore. They're atrophied right now from not hugging.
Getting to see more people. Professionally, it's exactly what I'm doing right now. I think it is to continue to move the dial and get more people involved and making our industry broadly defined, tech and entrepreneurship and venture capital, more inclusive. So that continues to be, that's really, kind of my number one. I'm hoping the next human capital survey we do at VentureForward, we see some budging, and particularly on geography, race, and ethnicity. And so that's going to be a focus.
Yeah, I love that. You're such a great guest, because I feel well, one, we both talk a lot, so which is awesome. I always love it. When everyone's da, da, da. Whenever I ask a question and it's crickets, I'm oh, this is awkward. But I also feel you're such a authentic trailblazer. Like you're clearly like your goal for this year is to like do more trailblazing, and you have like an entire career of being like the first woman in the room. So like I just love that. And thank you so much for that.
I want there to be a crowd in the bathroom.
Yeah, a crowded. Well, let's stop just short of that. No. Yeah, exactly. I love that. So next week on the Cackle, I'm excited. We have Joe Malcoon, who is a philanthropist, investor, entrepreneur. He's a really cool guy. He's so good at like building that network and like, and I mentioned earlier, like connecting with the community and kind of, you know, like anywhere you go with him is really annoying because like you'll be going to grab a drink with him and he'll just start like talking to the bartender to be like, oh yeah, remember when we did this together? And then I'm like, why do you know every single person in this community? So he's gonna be helping people like learn how to better connect and like, which is important.
That's the big thing. That's really important for all the things we just talked about today. That's a great. And so much happening there. I mean, there's a lot. So that's best. And he gives a lot back, which is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. So thank you, Kate, so much for being on. I loved catching up with you, and I will hopefully talk to you more soon.
All right. See you soon.
See you.
See ya. Bye.